I'm Mark. I'm the owner of J.P. Trodden Distilling in Maltby, Washington. And this is my story. Like anything else, it starts with great raw product. Having been a chef for many years, I understand the principles of having a great base product to create something else. So what I do with the corn and the wheat, because I have a wheated bourbon, is maybe a little different than what everybody else does. The way I cook it, the length of time, how I crush the grain, how I let it steep overnight on the mash liquid before adding yeast to it, how I use a different yeast than somebody else, and then down to both the first and second distilling processes. Where am I going to make those cuts? To make a great bourbon, you have to be willing to make the cuts pretty deep. In other words, you don't keep everything that comes through that still. You keep the best stuff that comes through the still. When I was in my late 40s, my wife Jennifer and I started having conversations about what our 50s and beyond might look like. And I'd been in the restaurant industry since I was 16, so more than 30 years at that point. And I just felt that I had something else I could do and be passionate about. So we wanted to open our own business, is what we decided. And beyond that, I felt like I wanted to create a product that could be something that people loved, because I was used to making food for people, and something that could be a family legacy. So the more we talked about it, the more we talked about different products we could potentially make. And one night while having that conversation, she was looking through a magazine and came across an ad for Tito's vodka. And she held it up and she said, "You could distill, couldn't you?" I said, "Yeah. As far as I know, it's just slow motion cooking." So we thought more and more about it, and I said, "Listen, I'm not going to make vodka. I'm not passionate about vodka. But through my experience with bourbon whiskey throughout my restaurant years, I was passionate about bourbon. So I said, okay, let's do this, but it's gonna be bourbon." I'm not sure she was ready for the length of time it takes to get the bourbon to market, but it all worked out. I looked at it as the old story of how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. And you don't even know how big the elephant is when you start. You just keep taking a bite every day and moving forward. So it was finding the right equipment for the style of whiskey I wanted to make. It was finding a space that could be approved by the TTB. It was finding a farmer who would provide all my grain, because I wasn't big enough to go to the big grain houses and say, "Will you sell me grain?" It was just bit by bit, until suddenly, one day, I actually had everything in place and I was making bourbon. Having been a chef, I could feel the bones in it. I could feel the foundation of what I had created, and I could continue to make it more efficient. But I had the right product, I felt. But unlike when you're a chef and you put food on a plate and it immediately goes out to a table, you don't get that instant feedback. It was years later, when I felt like it was a great product. We released it, it got good feedback, and then a year and a half later, I sent it to the World Spirits Competition in San Francisco, and the weekend after that ended, I went into the distillery by myself, as I always did, because in those days I worked all by myself. I opened up, got everything running, I sat down at my desk, and I looked at this email from the World Spirits Competition and I said, "You won a double gold medal." So at that point I knew I was doing it right. Through every challenge, I guess what I kept thinking about was, I'm in this too deep. I'm in it too deep to fail. And beyond that, I put my grandfather's name on that bottle. I would not allow myself to quit, because he was my hero. What's extraordinary for me? To this day, my favorite thing is when I'm filling barrels. First, just the satisfaction of knowing I've created this product that's going into this barrel and it's not going to see the light of day for many years. But that smell and the heavy charred oak, when that new make whiskey goes into that barrel, it's amazing. It's the most amazing part of this entire thing. Having eaten the elephant was a pretty proud moment when I produced that first whiskey. I put it in the first barrels. Obviously winning a double gold medal was not something I had to do, but when it happened, it was a little bit overwhelming. I'm really proud of having achieved that. And when you think about the legacy of bourbon starting in Kentucky and the fact that it can be made anywhere else in the United States, but 95% of it is made in Kentucky to this day. Having done something in a few years' time that many other bourbon distilleries still have not achieved, that have been around for decades, that was a pretty proud moment.